This evening I'd like to share one more story of the mercy of God and how it changed a life. And I want to recognize this last story is probably a bit more on the heavier side. So just want to mention that beforehand as we walk through it. But I want to share the story of a man named David. When David and his brother were younger, they were facing abuse at the hands of a caretaker. And at one point, they made the decision to take the life of their abuser, this individual, which complicated what was already a terrible and traumatic situation. Now, in the wake of this killing, they found themselves facing uncertainty, imprisonment for this crime, and a lot more. And in these circumstances, one might effectually write them off as like there's no hope for them, right? It's like there's no mercy for them. You can't really come back from that. Yeah, they're beyond mercy, is what we might say. Yet through acts of mercy, and by the grace of God, God has written a new story. David actually happens to be a really good friend of mine from college. We served in a homeless ministry together for quite some time. And David is actually here with us today to share a bit more of his story. So can you guys join me in welcoming my good friend, David? What's up, man? How you doing? All right. How you doing, man?
I am doing great.
Doing all right?
It's great to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you here. First, really deep, important question. You're a Seahawks fan and they won the Super Bowl.
Absolutely. And it was so great to just watch that game. But half of the game, the second half, I was watching it on my phone because my 5-year-old has to sleep with me all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So I wasn't able to cheer. I'm inside, I'm screaming and hollering, but I'm just quiet as a mouse.
More power to you, man. I think there's a picture of us the day after the Super Bowl, and you wanted to let everybody in the Philadelphia area know
Absolutely.
that you're a Seahawks fan.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but anyway, we should stop talking about that. Our AV guys are both Patriots fans, and they'll mute us. If
Go Seahawks.
Yeah. So, David, your story is marked by a scandalous mercy. Before we get to the mercy part, can you tell us how your story sort of began, how your journey being incarcerated kind of came to be?
Yeah, a lot of it came to be when I was 11 years old. That's when the sexual abuse began with me. It had started with my brother a couple months previously. And this abuse went on for 8 years. Towards the end of the abuse, it was more physical. This person was beating the crap out of us every day. He had tried to kill us numerous times. And so we had just got to this point where in psychology, it talks about seeing red. Yeah. And you're just filled with this rage and hatred and animosity. And that's what led to the murder.
Yeah. I recall hearing your story for the first time, and then was curious because here we're attending college together. So I'm sure a lot's happened between that and kind of being in college together. So I want to ask, very early on in your detainment, you mentioned a kind of a moment of mercy that maybe was kind of a flip of a switch a little bit. Can you tell us about those first moments of mercy and how they impacted you in what was probably a really kind of impossible situation in your life?
Yeah, so October 29th, 1999, I was 20 years old and I was arrested for murder. And that first weekend, and this murder happened in Alabama. If y'all know anything about Alabama, they love to give out the death penalty. So here it is, I'm 20 years old, crying myself to sleep this weekend because I'm thinking I'm gonna get the death penalty, or I'm thinking I'm gonna spend the rest of my life in prison. November 1st, 1999, I'm taken back over to the city jail for more questioning. I am put in this interrogation room, and I sit there for 7 hours. So I have time to think about the abuse. I have time to think about the murder. I have time to think about everything that had transpired in my life. I called the detective in and confessed to the crime. That was this big weight that was taken off of my chest. But the thing that really changed the whole trajectory of my life is what happened when the detective was taking me back to the county jail. We're in his cop car. I'm in the front seat, handcuffed and shackled. I look at him. I'm like, am I going to get the death penalty or life without parole? And he's like, do you believe in God? I'm like, okay, am I going to get the death penalty or life without parole?
It's like, you didn't ask that.
He's like, do you believe in God? I'm like, okay, am I going to get the death penalty? And so finally I was like, yes, I believe in God. He's like, you need to seek him now. And I grew up in the church. I knew what to say. I knew how to say it. I was there Sunday morning, Sunday school, Sunday church, Sunday night, Wednesday night, Awana, everything, had all the verses memorized, especially Jesus wept. That's the easiest verse to memorize.
So short.
But when I asked for a Bible, they gave me a little New Testament Bible. I didn't go to Matthew. I didn't go to John. I didn't go to Romans. I went to Revelations. I went to the end of the book. I was like, let's start here. And I got to Revelations 3:20 that says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone opens the door and allows me to come in, I will come in and sup with them. And I cried out to God. I'm like, God, I don't know what's going to happen. But immediately this peace and joy came over me. And here I am in my little 6x9 cell, singing, dancing, singing Our God's an Awesome God, singing Step by Step, singing all of these worship songs that I sang in youth group.
And this is like near the beginning of your being incarcerated.
3 days in.
Did that confuse people that you had this really kind of profound situation going on, and your new life now is being behind bars, and so that could throw people off?
It really wasn't something that in the first month, because I was in the booking cell and then other, sure. But when I went into the population dorm, I was able to just invest in some of the other incarcerated folks, and have conversations. And the dorm I initially went into, we'd have Bible studies like every other day. Yeah. And there were 17 people in the dorm, and at times we'd have 15 people out there involved with the study. So it was really powerful.
That's awesome. Thanks for that. So you're no longer in prison because you're here.
What?
Yeah. Your being released was the product of the work of an attorney who's known for his mercy and his work advocating for the poor, the incarcerated, the wrongfully convicted, and many on death row. And this would be the work of Brian Stevenson, the founder of the Equal Justice Initiative and the author of the book, Just Mercy. Can you tell us more about how this came to be in your life, this moment where you started working with Brian, and how his work and convictions on mercy have impacted your life?
Yeah, so one of the people I was incarcerated with was a client of Brian's, and then he put me and my brother in touch with him. And they began to do a lot of looking into our case. And there were a lot of reasons that our case could have been appealed, but Alabama has such a short period as far as being able to appeal your case. So they shifted their gears and said, okay, we're going to help you guys out with parole. And so both my brother and I made parole. But probably the second or third visit, Brian's like, I know that you want to further your education. He's like, I know of this great Christian school up in Pennsylvania called Eastern University. Do you think you'd want to go? I was like, okay, that sounds pretty cool. But what was amazing was when I got the booklets and the flyers from Eastern, and I saw that Eastern had a prison ministry. I saw that they had yacht. I was like, wow, I want to go here because...
They may not know what yacht is. I know we know what it is because we were in that club together. Do you explain? Because it sounds like a yacht club, like a boating club.
So you go ahead and explain the word. I forget.
Yeah, it's an acronym, Youth Against Complacency and Homelessness Today. And that's where we met, was serving in that club together, going to the city a couple times a week to encounter our homeless friends with a meal. So, yeah.
And... because the one thing that I always think about is there's a lot of churches, that talk about their faith and talk about doing this or that, but they don't actually put their feet to the work. And so I saw that Eastern is some place that was putting their feet to the work, putting their feet to the ground, getting out there and impacting people, not just impacting people in the church, impacting the marginalized people, the people that showing this scandalous mercy.
Yeah, I remember when I first heard your story, just kind of seeing that depiction, hearing your story, and then seeing you immediately jump in and serve other people, I thought was really profound. So we met in 2014. And you were released in 2014, is that right?
I was released April 1st, 2013.
Okay. So after that, your life's changed a lot because of a lot of acts of mercy along the way. Including much of what Brian did. So let's talk about how your life has changed. You talked about going to Eastern. Go Eagles.
Yeah, going to Eastern was such a powerful opportunity. And going up there, here I am, 34 years old. I just served 13 and a half years in prison. Been out 9 months, And they put my testimony in the school paper the second week I was there. Now, I helped write the article, so it wasn't this hit piece. Yeah. But that morning that the paper came out, I kind of felt like I was butt booty naked in front of everybody, because it's like, everybody's going to know everything about me. It's like, how are they going to receive me? Are they going to show me grace? Are they going to show me mercy? Or am I going to be labeled like, oh, watch out, that's that murderer, stay away from him. But there was so much love, so much compassion, so much forgiveness, and just the way that I was viewed. I mean, there were times where people would be like, David, do you know everybody on campus? I was like, no, just about 85% of the people, because I'm 110% extrovert, and so my story's out there. I was also the mascot for a bit, and it was
Eastern?
Yeah, I was Beaker.
That's crazy. You were Beaker, the eagle. That's crazy. Go Birds. Okay, continue. Sorry.
But just the way that I was accepted made my experience so powerful. I have a lot of colleagues who are formerly incarcerated who didn't have that same type of experience. Now, we want to talk about Eastern going above and beyond. I lived on campus for a bit. Somebody that went to prison for murder lived on Eastern University's college campus.
And they put it in the paper.
No, that wasn't in the actual paper, though. But you're talking about my story, yeah. And it was such a powerful example of them showing that love and saying, okay, we're not going to label you by the worst thing that you've done. Yeah. We're looking at who you are today. We're looking at the life that you're living, and that's how we're going to view you.
Yeah. So I know Eastern was a big part of your life. I also know you were in a movie. So I know Brian Stevenson took his book, Just Mercy, and it became a movie, and you were cast in it. Can you tell us more about that experience?
Yeah, it was a very amazing, incredible experience. Not only the fact for being in a movie, with Michael B. Jordan, Jamie Foxx, Brie Larson, just a couple people, that are kind of famous,
Yeah, just a little bit.
But I get this call from Brian Stevenson in August of 2018. He tells us about this. And the thing about Brian is he's always about changing the narrative. So there were 4 roles in this movie that were 4 incarcerated people. And he wanted 4 of his clients to play these roles instead of 4 actors, because we had the lived experience. We were the people that actually experienced prison time. So we had that lived experience. I was only one of the 4 of us that actually served time in Alabama. So putting on that white Alabama Department of Corrections uniform was kind of surreal, because I thought I would never put one of those on again. But here it is, I'm putting it on for the movie. But another amazing aspect is each one of us got to share our story for 18 to 20 minutes. And so the 3 lines I have in the movie are actually parts of my own story. And so it's not just him changing the narrative with us who did time in prison being in the movie, but our stories are embedded in the movie now.
I missed that entirely when I watched it for the first time, because I was watching and I had no clue you were in the movie, and then I see David pop up on my screen, like, what is he doing in this movie? And so I'm glad you explained that after the fact, because I would have had no clue that you were sharing kind of your own testimony here on this movie. That's kind of impacted a lot of lives, right? So additionally, in addition to kind of being an actor, you're working on a memoir right now. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I'm working on my story. My book is going to be a bit different than a lot of people with their memoirs, because I want it to be able to be used in colleges and universities where it could be part of criminal justice classes. So I'm going to have aspects about criminal justice theories, different things like that, but my memoir. But one of the main things is one chapter is going to be all about that encounter I just talked about with the detective, because, I would not have a story. I would not be here right now if it wasn't for that detective. It wasn't for God using somebody that I would have never thought he could or would use to reach me in that moment.
Yeah. You're also married with a son. What's his name? What's her name?
My son's name is Guy, and my wife's name is Jane.
And he doesn't stay up for Super Bowl shows, or Super Bowls,
No,
I guess. Yeah.
though I have a Seahawks hat, and the past week and a half, he's wearing it every day, and he's saying, "Go Seahawks!" And so, doesn't the Bible say you have to train up the way of a child and then never depart?
I thought it was for the Philadelphia Eagles because the Bible mentions the Eagles too, but that's besides the point. And then your work, what you do nowadays. So you work as a criminal justice reform leader, and you speak all over. In fact, you're flying to Florida this evening to speak tomorrow. Can you tell us more about that line of work?
Yeah, so it's such an amazing opportunity that I get to travel the country and speak in universities. I've spoken in 90 universities and colleges across the country. And in it, I always get to talk about my faith. I get to, some of my presentations, they have to see Revelations 3:20, and I have it written out. And I've never had somebody say, you can't talk about God, because if they do, I'm like, I'm not coming. Now, I did have one person ask, like, are you going to preach, or are you just going to talk about God a little bit? I'm like, you're not a Christian university, so I'm not going to preach, but I am going to talk about God. They're like, okay, that's good. But one of the most profound experiences I had after speaking one time was this. It was at Auburn University in 2022. This young lady who was a junior came up to me. She was crying. Most of the interactions I have like this are individuals who were sexually or physically abused coming up and sharing their story for the first time. But that wasn't the case, and so it kind of threw me off. But she's like, hey, I have been here for 3 years. I've been to so many different speakers, but I've never heard one of our speakers talk about their faith so openly and so boldly. And she's like, thank you. It just resonated in me so much. And so it's this incredible opportunity to not only share my story and to show people God's mercy, to show people God's grace, but to also proclaim who he is.
Yeah. It's cool that God's used your story to open doors for so many more people to hear the gospel. And that's because it started with that act of mercy at the beginning, right? 2 more questions. What did these moments of mercy that kind of led to where you are today teach you about yourself? And what did they teach you about God?
I mean, what they taught me about God is that he's always there. He is never going to leave you alone. The times that you think he's not there, he's there. He's working. Because even when I was going through the abuse and going to church, I wrestled with this fact that how could a loving God allow this to happen to me? But he was there. He was allowing that word to be put in my heart. He was allowing people to be placed in my life who were going to be instrumental in my growth while I was in prison. What it taught about me is resilience, being able to just keep pushing on. Even though there were times I wanted to quit, even though there were times that I wanted to commit suicide, God did not allow that to happen. And it always showed me that God has this amazing, incredible plan for me. And it's not my time to go yet. And he's going to continue to open doors. He's going to place the people in front of me. He's going to allow me to minister. And one thing I also do, too, is I'm a waiter at a restaurant. And there's been many times that I've been able to minister to the different people that the tables I'm waiting on. I've been able to share my story with the staff, and I mean, I'm the type of person that you probably don't want to sit next to on the airplane, because if you start that conversation, you're going to hear my story, You're going to hear about God, and it's just that ability to know that, wow, I've been brought through all of this, and God is allowing me to impact so many people with us.
Yeah. All a product of mercy. And so last question, in your journey with faith, in your journey as one whose life was changed by someone else's mercy, how can the church become a community marked by scandalous mercy, a community that sees every image bearer as worthy of mercy?
I spoke at Mennonite Church a couple years ago on Psalms 41 through 3. And that's the passage that talks about God picking us up out of miry pit, cleaning us off, putting us on the solid rock, and giving us a new song to sing. And afterwards, we had this Q&A. Some of the work that I've done too is I advocate for people who've committed sexual offenses. So if you want to talk about mercy, you want to talk about grace, that's me, somebody who was sexually and physically abused, advocating for this population. Because I don't see them as the offense that they committed. I see them as the person that is in front of me. You know, that's what 2 Corinthians 5:17 says. Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he's a new creature. Old things have passed away, all things have become new. So this assistant pastor asked me, he's like, what should I do if somebody moves next to me who's on the sexual offense registry? So he was expecting this like profound answer, like, okay, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do. I said, hi, I'm your neighbor. And that's what we have to do. You know, we have to reach out to people. We can't look at labels. We can't just say, oh, that person looks disheveled. You know, I don't want to go up and talk to them. It's like we have to look for those ways and those people that we can impact. You know, when I go to work, when I'm driving to the restaurant, I'm constantly praying like, God, place the people at my table that you want me to talk to, you want me to minister, that you want me to talk to. You know, there was one table towards the end of their meal, you know, they're like, man, you got this swag, you know? And then we were talking and I shared my faith, you know, he's like, you got that God swag, you know? And I was like, okay, thanks, you know? But that's another thing, you know, it's like what you said earlier, you know, what type of Bible do we want people to see? You know, we might be the only Bible that somebody reads today. So are we showing that love? Are we showing that, and can people see the light in us? You know, we are to be the light of the world. It's not always about what we say. It's what we do, how we treat people, how we smile at somebody that we don't know, you know?
Yeah. Hey, can we thank my friend David here? Appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you.
Yep.
I appreciate you. We're going to do communion in just a minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you may have gotten just a sense of it from hearing David, but dude, you're just such a fun guy. I kind of resonate. I hope whoever's sitting next to you on the airplane tonight, you guys have a great conversation.